As the timeless Sufi story tells it, a king finds himself torn between sad despair and joy, with small things causing large emotional reactions, and frustrated that powerful happiness can so quickly turn to intense sadness and disappointment. This powerful ruler becomes tired of his life, knowing that this needs to change, and so he sends for one he is told is known for his wisdom and ability to hold truths. The king demands to know what the secret is of being happy and offers to pay any price to have this knowledge. And the wise man replies, I may be able to offer you something. However, it is at such a great price that were you to give me everything in your kingdom, you would not be offering a high enough price for it. So I will give it to you. However, if I do, you must promise to use it. So the king gives his word, and the other man leaves, returning with a carved jade box. Yet when the king opens it, inside is something very simple, a gold ring, carved with the words, "This too shall pass." When the king questions this dubious gift, his visitor explains, wear this ring every hour of your days, and when something happens before you pronounce it bad or good, touch these words and remember their meaning. For if you do this, you will be at peace. Touch the ring. Be the mountain. In this community, in these last weeks, we have lost beloved people to death, while still others are struggling with illness. We are grappling in this community with the anticipated departure of a beloved minister, for me, of a colleague and a partner. And here it is, a time of holidays when tinsel-strewn happiness is the expectation, and our country is rent asunder by the verdicts in two trials involving the treatment of Black men at the hands of the police, Michael Brown in Ferguson and Eric Garner in New York City. At a time when we are supposed to be able to move away from the cares of the world, we are being called back deeply into its heart by a disturbing sense that something is amiss, and a more disturbing sense that we do not know how to even think about it, much less what to do about it. Now, spiritual teacher and psychologist David Rico was with us about 2 years ago, and he'll be returning to us in March to offer us some of his truths again this year. He notes that we all of us in all of our lives face times when there are changes, when there are endings that we do not want, when things completely defy the plans that we have laid, when life seems grossly unfair, when we are called up short to recognize that pain is a part of life, and also when we have to face the fact that people are not loving and loyal all the time. Someone dies, someone leaves, someone does something that shakes our faith in them, or perhaps even our faith in something larger, perhaps our faith in people, in humankind. You realize that you are aging, and you aren't that thrilled about that. Something changes that you thought would never change. One of the legs which the awning of your world rests upon, something or someone goes away. And sometimes it is just this world we live in where people are being confronted with dizzying changes every day, changes which defy imagination. People are living longer than they ever imagined or planned to live, traveling further than they ever knew they could go, knowing more than they ever thought they could have known. People are exposed through the wonderments of technology to the news of an entire planet, and Before they are able to comprehend the news of their own neighborhood or their own town, they are faced with the news of the world. Just a few decades ago, we would not have had the news of all the different permutations of unrest coming to us minute by minute the way they are now. We certainly would not have known the details of protests that turned violent in Berkeley yesterday, or the loss of life by execution of photojournalist Luke Summers, which was also yesterday. People today are invited to ideas, into trends, into knowledge, into horror larger than they could even ever have imagined, and all, sometimes it feels, all at the same time. And meanwhile, our own lives are happening. I have the dubious distinction of understanding this all too well, this sort of experience. Times when all that I thought was firm and solid have shifted and moved, when, as Linda so eloquently shared, all we are left with is the questions that remain. To try to still believe in those times that my life has value, knowing that we live in a society where people judge people by what happens to them, even when it's not in their control. To still put energy into being the best parent I can be, even on those days when my anger and grief and my child's anger and grief intersect in a very unfortunate Venn diagram of volatile chemical reactions. To walk with you as your minister, even in the face of understandable disappointment and distrust. To understand what it means to walk in faith and depend on grace more than I ever have in my entire life. To be sustained, because one of the privileges of being your minister is to know that many of you are doing the same thing or have done it at some point in your own lives. Because when we face times when it seems as if we have drawn enough short straws to have our own toothpick collection, we do in fact have the resources and the will and the intelligence to make it through. Writers Frederick and Marianne Brisson talk about a practice of equanimity, which they define as a state of inner balance which enables you to remain calm and centered in the midst of all the turmoil in your life. They point out that equanimity does not mean not getting involved in the issues that are before us. It does not mean that we're indifferent to events. Quite the opposite, they write. It means that you care enough to admit that you don't have all the answers to the questions. You realize that you cannot control the future, and that what you think is the best may or may not be the way to go in the long run, or may not be the best path in the bigger picture. Those of us assembled here today do not collectively believe that there is some great puppet master in the world who will pull the strings and tidy all the seams. So in weeks such as this one, when into the comforts of our living rooms and bedrooms, into the mobile sanctuaries of our cars, we hear a lot of talk about Ferguson, about New York, about the deaths of Black men at the hands of the police, we feel overwhelmed. PBS commentator Tavis Smiley, who is also a biographer of Martin Luther King Jr., offers this analysis. I have no idea where this story is headed in the coming days, weeks, and months. Sadly, I do know where America is headed if we don't come to realize that these killings of Black youth are really much less about black and white or even right and wrong, and more about our society's incessant contestation of the dignity and humanity of too few citizens. So what to do, he asks, what to do about our individual and collective sense of helplessness